Ryan James, welcome to Mold Week on Women's Wellness Radio.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. So you live in Florida, in Tampa, is that right?
Yes, Tampa, Florida.
Okay, and you are a claims adjuster. Is that also right?
Right. I'm actually a public claims adjuster.
Public claims adjuster. Okay, so let's start out with what is that?
So, a public claims adjuster represents homeowners who are filing insurance claims with their insurance company. The insurance company has an adjuster who represents the insurance company. And a lot of people don't realize that they're entitled to have an adjuster who represents them. And so what we do is we come in as a representative, and we can come in at any point of the claim. Ideally, we come in at the beginning, we'll file the claim on their behalf, and the insurance company will work directly with us. So it really takes a lot of that burden off of the shoulders of the homeowner.
Oh, okay.
We're very familiar with the claims process and all the nuances of it. So we're able to oftentimes get it done quite a bit quicker without the stress that the homeowner normally feels in doing it themselves. And not only that, but we typically collect a lot more money on their behalf.
Okay. And are you paid directly from the homeowner, or do you get like a portion of the claim? How does that work?
Right. So we're only paid if we collect money on behalf of the homeowner, and it's a percentage of what we collect.
Okay.
Typically, we collect. There's actually been some studies done through the Florida legislature over a couple of years ago, and they were actually using citizens' claims as their study. And what they determined was that the average homeowner collected several times more money using a public adjuster rather than filing them claims and working it themselves. So typically, more than makes up for the percentage that we charge.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I've worked as an acupuncturist with a lot of auto claim cases, in the health side of it, but I'll often recommend people to get a lawyer, and it seems like it's a similar, like, yeah, you have an insurance company and they're supposed to be representing you, but they're really representing them, and you don't really know what you're getting into. And I've seen people, take too low of a settlement too quickly, or really be put through a lot of stress. So, and I've also, frankly, I've seen occasionally the client get a little bit burned by the attorney too. So I think you have to be careful who you pick. But yeah, I usually recommend it because of all these things you're just talking about. They don't really know the process. They don't know their rights. So having somebody to see that through is super helpful.
Absolutely. There's a lot of different ways that homeowners end up getting underpaid. Oftentimes, it's the operating procedures of the insurance company. They're kind of geared in manners that homeowners are kind of at a disadvantage. Sometimes it's just the particular adjuster that we're using. So you may have two identical houses on the same street with the same damage, same insurance company, and the claim comes out completely different because they have different adjusters, and the home what they need to be asking, what they should be doing, and what their rights are.
Okay. Yeah, it's super interesting. Yeah, I know my brother-in-law, we were thinking of having him on, but now we have you on it. So he had some flooding in his home in Oregon, and he was just like on the phone constantly, like fighting for his rights, like trying to get some temporary housing paid for. And not a lot of people have the tenacity to keep
And
going
they don't
on
even
that.
know how much they're entitled to. So they may get a check and they think it's a lot of money. And I've seen it a lot. They're excited. They're like, "Well, look at how much money I got. My damage isn't worth that much. I got extra money." And then they'll call a contractor in, and the contractor's just like, "Well, we can't really do it for that, but we'll find a way to make it work." And they're always surprised because what may seem like a lot of money may not actually be a lot of money based on what the damage they had, or oftentimes damage is hidden. And I've seen situations where, because we get a full adjuster summary from the insurance company, that the adjuster indicates every line item of damage that they came across. And based on those line items, I've seen where they know there's more damage elsewhere because they only did part of the line items for that area, but they knew the homeowner wouldn't see it either. So the homeowner thinks they got a really big check.
Oh,
And the reality is they probably should have, in my experience, those checks should be 2-3 times more than what the homeowner got that they thought was so big. So sometimes the homeowner's happy and doesn't even know that they really got ripped off.
Yeah, it's the exact same with auto injury. You think, oh, well, this isn't going to take that long, is it? And it's like, yeah, you got hit by a moving vehicle. It's gonna take more than you've ever experienced, probably. And same if your house is damaged in a hurricane or a flood. So, yeah, there's a lot to it. So I wonder if we could start with, the coverage itself. So, for instance, my own mold story, I got sick from water damage just from a slow leak in the wall I didn't know about. So my understanding on that was, you're not covered. They consider that neglect. So a lot of people would say to us, "Oh yeah, no, you should be covered. You should call them again." But I was like, "No, I don't think it's covered." But I know one when we interviewed in this series in Texas, she did have flood coverage, and not all of her neighbors did because they didn't think they would be flooded. So just kind of tell us, what are our options with coverage? What is covered? What is not?
Well, you touched on a few different things there. You talked about mold, for example, and different policies have different endorsements from how they'll cover mold. So there may be limitations. I see a lot of policies that have a $10,000 maximum on their mold coverage. So that's all they'll put towards it. But if you work the claim properly, you can separate different components of the claim that are mold versus water damage.
Okay.
And by doing that properly, you can actually get more of your claim covered. So it really varies from policy to policy on how much coverage you have specifically for mold. At the same time, I've seen situations where I've come in, someone's called me in and I've looked at it. It's gross. It looks like mold to me, and not being certified to determine mold, I can't legally say, hey, that's mold. And I certainly can't say what type of mold it is, but I can say it resembles mold. And then I refer them to a mold remediation company. And sometimes it's not that bad as far as what they have to remove, and it's under the deductible or at their deductible, and it's a lot better off not filing that claim, because now you have the situation where now the insurance company knows that you have mold, and they're going on all kinds of additional proof that it's been remediated. And sometimes that can stick with you even when you go to sell the house later on, and they want proof, and really it wasn't that bad of a thing, and you filed a claim unnecessarily, and so it kind of got out there. If you hire a good remediation company, they can give you a certification that everything's been cleaned properly. And again, it's good to get that estimate first, in my opinion, before you actually file the claim. Find out what it's going to cost to remediate that mold.
Okay. So, and when I spoke of the water damage we had was kind of, they called it neglect, or do you see that often? Do you see sometimes people can get a claim filed on that?
Right. So that's a trickier kind of claim, and we have to work a little bit harder with those types of claims where you have maybe a pipe that's dripping in a wall. Some policies have a 14-day exclusion written in them, which means that if the damage is occurring for beyond a 14-day period, that's not covered.
Okay.
And others don't say that, but they say that it's neglect and it's been occurring over too long of a period of time. And then we come back and push, well, any reasonable person isn't going to be able to know that this is there. Perfect example being a cracked shower pan. That's not something you see leaking right away, and it takes a while before it surfaces. It's impossible to know that that's leaking. So, those types of claims we do come across, and we do get them paid oftentimes, but it's definitely a bit of a fight when it's ongoing like that.
Well, I probably should have hired you, but sometimes you just don't have the energy to fight things when you're dealing with a lot, and when you're sick.
You mentioned the word flood, and there's a difference between a plumbing leak and a flood. And I've come across situations where a homeowner calls their insurance company, and they're like, my house flooded. And the insurance company says, well, you don't have flood insurance. And the homeowner just thinks they're stuck and goes on their way and tries to take care of the problem themselves. And the reality is they just use incorrect terminology. And the company will use that against you as well. If you use incorrect jargon or terminology, They make a record of that, and sometimes that can come back to bite you. What the policyholder should have said is, I had a plumbing leak, and that's covered. And it's, and actually not the leak itself, that little piece of pipe that's broken isn't covered, but all the damage that the water caused and getting to that pipe, whether it's in a wall or under your floor, that damage is covered, as well as putting that material back. So if it's a slab leak on the slab of your house and they have to tear out your wood floors, jackhammer your floor, the concrete to fix the pipe, insurance won't cover to fix the pipe, but all that damage to get to it and everything it takes to repair it, that's what they do cover.
Okay. So not the leak, but the water damage would be in, it sounds like, in most policies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In the state of Florida.
So yeah, okay. I guess.
I can't say for every other state because I'm definitely not an expert in all 50 states.
Okay. So flood coverage, that's like an additional coverage that you can opt for. Is that right?
Yes. And a lot of people, in my opinion, make the mistake of only getting flood insurance if they're in a quote unquote flood zone. And here in Florida, everybody's in the flood zone. But there's certain areas that are more likely to flood where, for example, your mortgage company is going to require you have flood insurance. And if people aren't required to have flood insurance, they don't get it because they don't want to pay for the extra expense. What they don't realize is that the flood insurance is a lot cheaper if they're not in one of those so-called flood zones. It could be less than $200 a year. And I've seen houses that aren't supposed to have floods and tens and tens of thousands of dollars, $60,000, $80,000 or more. And they could have had coverage for that had they been willing to pay $200 a year for that flood insurance. And flood insurance is getting better and better. Over the last few years, we started seeing private insurance companies offer flood insurance, whereas in the past you could only get it through basically a government entity, which is national.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's all you had. And the problem with them is that they don't have to follow the same rules as your typical insurance companies do. Here in Florida, we have what we call matching statutes, which basically states that if they cut out a piece of your wall because it's wet, when they put that wall back, they have to pay for enough texture to retexture the entire wall so it matches, to paint the entire wall or the entire room so that it matches. With flood through National Flood, they only have to pay for enough material to cover that 2-foot high cut that they made. All of that. So they don't give you enough money to repair everything properly. And that's just because the government doesn't have to follow the same rules as the rest of the insurance industry. So it's even more advantageous if you can find flood insurance through a private carrier rather than going through the government, because not only is it most likely cheaper, but you're probably going to be covered better than using the government programs.
Oh, okay. And you said mortgage insurance requires it, or only some of them require it? What was that?
So yeah, here in Florida anyway, when you have a mortgage on a property, if you're in what they call a flood zone, which it really, again, everybody's in a flood zone, but it just has to do with the likelihood of it being flooded and how severe that zone is. Some people are required to have flood insurance on their home as long as they have a mortgage. If they don't get it, the mortgage company will actually buy it on their behalf and then add it to their mortgage payment. It's a very, very expensive policy rather than buying it on your own.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. So you think generally it sounds like it's good no matter where you live or what you suspect to have flood coverage if you possibly can.
Yeah. I mean, again, maybe not if you're up in the mountains someplace where you're really high, but, in Florida where everybody's at sea level or a few feet over, it's definitely important to have.
Yeah, and I think that it happens more than we think. One of our speakers is from Boulder, and they had bad flooding in 2013. My brother-in-law, who I mentioned, the water damage was from excessive snow they had one year. So, now I live in Arizona. I don't think I'm going to flood, yeah. But, I could still have that broken pipe or, a bathtub.
A plumbing leak does not fall into the floodplain. That's
right.
A regular homeowner's policy will cover a plumbing leak. Or you leave the bathtub on, or a child leaves the bathtub on. Actually, I just had one of those claims last week where one of the kids was cleaning the bathtub and left it running and went into the back bedroom and started folding laundry, trying to do housework. And she was a teenager, and wouldn't let the dog out. It wasn't until she let the dog out and saw water pouring out of the side of the house that she realized something bad had happened. And yeah, it flooded the entire living room, the
Oh,
bedroom.
wow.
And,
Yeah, I've had a couple like friends and clients leave their bathtub running like that. So
yeah,
it
and
happens.
the coverage does, your policy does cover, I always say it covers stupidity. So you have an accident or you do something dumb, that's typically something that's covered. As long as it's immediate and accidental, if you follow that rule of thumb, your insurance policy is probably going to cover it.
Okay. Okay, so I was hoping, Ryan, you could tell us a little bit about what's happened and what you've noticed here or there in Florida with, it's Irma, right, that you guys were hit with?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah, and I heard some statistics that like in the Keys, like 90% of the homes were damaged, but I honestly don't really know which areas of Florida got hit and how severely. So we'd just love to hear your feedback on some of that.
Well, so when a hurricane comes, it produces a lot of wind and rain and not necessarily right at the eye of the hurricane. So, if we had a hurricane, I think it was Matthew, last year that was over on the East Coast, and I'm on the West Coast, and we still had damage from it. And in the state of Florida, if the governor declares a state of emergency in any particular county, any wind damage or anything of that nature is considered hurricane damage. In this, with Irma, the entire state was under a state of emergency. So any wind damage that occurred, whether or not the eye was anywhere near you during that time frame, was considered hurricane damage. So it's, to say what was hit by the hurricane, I guess everything is, in that particular situation.
Okay, so what percentage of the state do you think got, like this excess wind and rain and all that?
I would say probably the entire state.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And another, when you're at I went through Hurricane Charlie and went through the eye of the hurricane. I think it's the northwest side of the hurricane is the strongest and produces a lot of tornadoes. And I was living in Orlando at the time, and the tornadoes are what caused the majority of the damage in that particular hurricane. So you've got all different types of things. You've got storm surge that can cause damage. You've got high winds from the hurricane itself. You've got the tornadoes, and all these different things can occur at different places. And maybe not all of them in any one place. So it just depends on where you happen to be. I can drive up and down the road, and I can find neighborhoods that we see roofs that are all damaged, and then a few miles away, they're not touched. So it just kind of depends.
Okay. Yeah, Florida. It's a rough place to live, the way you're describing. Yeah. But it has its advantages. So, okay, so we're getting a sense of what coverage we should have. I was curious about this state of emergency thing. So is part of the reason they declare that because it kind of helps with some of the assistance?
Yeah, there's all sorts of different things kind of kick in when a state of emergency is ordered. And, I'm not exactly sure everything that as far as what affects me in the insurance industry, it definitely affects, the way that we do business as claims adjusters. Pricing and whatnot goes down and all that type of thing automatically. So the state has control over, how much we can charge homeowners for our services and things like that. And that's, again, regulated. And during a hurricane, that goes down quite a bit.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
So we get busier, but we don't make as much money per claim. But
yeah, but there's more claims happening, type of thing. Okay. Yes. So Ryan, if you were a homeowner, you may be a homeowner, but what would you recommend to homeowners? I think we've talked about what kind of policy is best to have. What would you recommend if their home or business is damaged? What are some of the first steps they should do?
Well, typically, if you need to file a claim, it's always good to file a claim. But before that, even, you want to mitigate any future damage from occurring or any additional damage from occurring. So that could mean that you're going to put a tarp on your roof. or have someone put a tarp on your roof so that, as more rain comes, you're not damaging the interior of your home further. In fact, your policy language requires that you take reasonable efforts to mitigate additional damage. That could include if you have a water break or something like that, you turn off the water, turn off the power. You should really be doing that. As if you're evacuating, you should turn off your water and turn off your power before you leave. A lot of people don't do that. Turn off your gas, all that type of thing. So you want to do what you can to mitigate additional damage without, jeopardizing your safety. From there, it can be very difficult after a hurricane to find contractors and whatnot as far as to actually do the work. As a public adjuster, I'm going to say, call your local public adjuster because they know contractors, they know how to work with your insurance company. There are some insurance companies here in Florida that their phones just did not work. They couldn't handle the load for over a week after the hurricane. In other words, you'd call and you'd get a busy signal. And if you didn't get a busy signal, it would ring 3 or 4 times and go dead. And I'd call them nonstop all week, and that's all that happened. So that's a very frustrating time for a homeowner. And you kind of have to accept the fact that it's going to be a slow process. If going back to the mitigation, if your house is wet, you want to do what you can to try to get that dried out. If you have power, you want to turn your air on. If you've got a shop vac and you can't get a remediation company out there right away, you want to try to dry up as much as you can, because especially with our warm, humid climate, that's the perfect situation for mold to start growing fairly quickly. Now we have situations where homeowners are without power for days and days, if not weeks on end, and there's a lot less they can do to mitigate. Even the remediation companies, if they don't have power to work their equipment, there's very little they can do for you too. So that's time. If you've got wet carpeting and things like that, tear it out, get it out of there. If the pad is wet, you gotta get all of that out of there, because the longer it sits there, the more it's gonna create humidity in your house and just be the perfect environment for mold to grow and things like that.
Okay, so if you can't get a contractor to come out quickly, maybe just do some of the removal yourself.
Especially things like wet carpeting. You don't want anything that's soggy and wet just sitting there.
Okay.
A remediation company, if your carpet's soaking wet, chances are the remediation company is going to yank it out anyway. Few of them might try to dry it, but at that point it's stretched. It's basically ruined. So I always recommend tearing the carpet out, even to the remediation company, if it's soaking wet like that.
Yeah, that's not going to be able to be fixed for sure. So do you recommend, based on your experience, that people own a generator and have that, gassed up?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The basics for hurricane preparedness, is, make sure you have enough fuel, make sure you have enough water, make sure you have enough food. I think that if you evacuate like you should, and you go far enough away, you're going to be able to be okay. But if you don't and you stay where you're at, you're going to need more food than just that short period of time. When I went through Hurricane Charlie, we didn't have power at my house for 9 days. We didn't have drinkable water. There was all the gas stations were shut down. So you were very limited on the resources that you had. And that was over a week. And you can't rely on emergency services. During the hurricane, you call 911, they'll tell you they're not responding to emergencies. They can't.
Wow.
A fire truck can't drive in those high winds. They can't drive. I think it's something like 50-mile-an-hour winds they can't drive in, and then you've got debris on the ground. And so, you can't get very far without a flat tire. So if you're foolish enough to try to stay where you're at and hunker down, so to speak, you have to realize that if it doesn't work out, you're not going to have anybody to come help you for quite some time.
Yeah, I feel like every time there's one of these emergencies, there are people who don't follow the instructions, maybe because they've been through other hurricanes that never really like hit hard, or they just attached to their home. Go ahead.
Yeah, or they turn away. And I typically, personally, I've lived in Florida all my life, so I wait until the last minute, because I've seen these things turn away. Or, when I was in Orlando, Hurricane Charlie, they all thought was going to go right through Tampa. And everybody from Tampa moved up to Orlando and stayed in the Orlando hotels, and it ended up going way south, even of Sarasota, but then came up and hit Tampa. So you really never know where they're going to go. And I kind of wait until the last minute. Most people that evacuate right away, which is probably a smart thing to do, but there's tons of traffic. And, you know, if you have shortages of fuel, you're going to be burning up fuel, and then because you're stuck on the highway. So it's really tough. Probably the smartest thing to do is to use the non-hurricane evacuation routes, because they're the hurricane evacuation routes, and those are where all backed up. So
okay, maybe use an alternate route. Okay, yeah, these are really great tips. I like it. So let's say they've done some of these things, they evacuated and they've come back and they've removed some wet things. We talk about in some of the other interviews about like proper protective gear to wear and that kind of thing while you're doing that. They hire a public adjuster. You know, what more is there to do at this point besides wait?
That's pretty much it. I mean, by hiring a public adjuster, if you hire the right public adjuster, you know, they're going to stay on top of the claim for you. They're going to hound the insurance company. You know, I've come up to these adjusters. So there's so many claims right now. The insurance companies are bringing adjusters in from out of state to represent the insurance companies. They are outsourcing to independent adjusting companies to adjust their claims for them. And I'm meeting with these adjusters from the insurance companies, and they're having 150 claims put on them at a time. So you can imagine if you're just kind of calling up whenever, you know, hoping they're going to work your claim, that you're one in 150. When you use a public adjuster, we do have a certain level of, you know, they have a certain level of accountability to us. And you're no longer number 150 of 150. You know, we make sure that, you know, you're at the top of the stack, because they do feel more accountable when we're involved.
Because you kind of know the system better and know what to call them out on, type of thing.
Exactly. We know when they're breaking their own rules or their own policies, or even the state laws and things like that. And we'll call them out on it pretty quickly.
That's great. That's really great. So, Ryan, it sounds like this industry, this public adjuster, is a little bit state by state. Do you want to, if people are looking, they want to hire someone really local, or does it have to be someone who could physically come by their house, or not necessarily?
Yeah, well, to be a public adjuster, you have to be licensed in the state. The requirements to be licensed are more stringent than to be an adjuster through an insurance company. So there's a little bit more testing and that kind of thing. I believe the continuing education is probably higher too. But you have to be licensed in that state. So that's very important. The other thing is, I think it's crucial that the adjuster is actually able to come out to your property and take a look at the damage and assess it firsthand. You know, I'll take lots of photographs. I draw sketches of the property. I itemize everything that I see that's damaged. And then I use a software program called Xactimate, which is the same software that just about all the insurance companies use to put together their estimates. So I have they're looking at the same thing that they put together. You know, the difference is the line items. So they can't dispute what 42 linear feet of baseboard costs to remove and reset and repaint, which would be 3 different line items. But they can say, well, that doesn't need to be removed. You know, so that's what we argue with them about, is what needs to be removed and replaced and what doesn't. You know, I've seen estimates where the room has 72 linear feet in it of baseboard, and the estimate says 12 linear feet. You know, just as one example, talking about baseboards, I've seen other times where, you know, I had a claim, it was a $20,000 plumbing leak. And I looked at the estimate, my estimate was $40,000. I was like, gosh, it's twice as much. Well, there were 2 bathrooms, for example, identical bathrooms sharing a wall. And they put in there that they had to remove certain items, such as detaching a toilet, but they left that out in the bathroom next to them. They included that the bathtub, because the walls were wet and they had to remove the bathtub and that whole bathtub surround. You know, they had that the tile needed replaced, but they didn't include the material or the labor to put the cement backer board up that the tile goes on top of. You know, they would say that certain plumbing needed to be detached, but they only had one of the 2 plumbing lines included in their estimate. Things like that, you know, would add up, and eventually you get to an estimate that's actually twice what they're paying someone.
Yeah, I could see that. And I could also see how someone who hasn't done these kind of repairs in the past could be like, oh, 20,000 to fix some bathrooms sounds like a lot. But you really, and we've talked about this on the other interviews, you really have to be almost overzealous to, from a health perspective, get everything. You know, you don't want to half do the job and let mold collect somewhere, that kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I get it. I mean, and I can get it that it's intimidating to be thinking about that kind of money. I remember when we first got our mold inspector, I was like, oh no, I don't really want to do this. And yeah, I mean, our final bill on our home, and we ended up making some other changes because we decided to sell the house, but we put in, I don't know, easily 60,000, maybe 80,000 to the home. I mean, it's a lot of money,
Yeah.
especially for a lot of its stuff. It's not really that fun. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, the bones of the house. But yeah, it has to be done, and it's worth doing right. And I think people probably do want it done right. They just are unfortunately ignorant about the extent of work that needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, this has been super informative and helpful, Ryan. I really appreciate it. We will share your website and your Facebook page links there in Florida. Are there any other resources you want to share for people? I don't know if there's like an association or a national thing where people could look for a qualified adjuster.
Well, in Florida, we have FAPIA. And I think every state has a professional organization that, you know, all the, well, not all, but that majority of public adjusters should be members of, you know, and I think that you want to look for someone who's a member of an organization like that, because they're sharing information, you know, they offer continuing education. And I think it's really important that the public adjusters keep speed on what's going on as far as the laws and regulations and things like that in the insurance industry. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know you guys existed. So this has been very informative for me, and probably something I should have had, you know, a few years ago with my own home. But at least now we're, you know, we're just getting people informed, and that's sort of the point of all this.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks again, Ryan.
My pleasure. Thank you.